Welcome back for turn number 3. We're still on December 8th. It is now 1:30 p.m. We still have a line of sight of 5, and this is still a day turn. It is our first player's turn, and that is the Soviets. Before we enter the first player reset phase, let's go over the large number of reinforcements that the Soviets will be getting on this turn. 2 full infantry companies that include the 7th, 8th, and 9th of the 3rd 364th, and also the 4th, 5th, and 6th of the 2nd 364th. They're going to get each of those companies' respective machine gun units, and they'll also obtain another mortar and another infantry gun. And the same as previous turns, I've staged those reinforcements off on the edge of the map there. I think now would be a good time for the Soviets to strike these 2 Finnish companies that are stranded during the retreat. They're not across a bridge, they're not surrounded by frozen lake hexes, so the Soviets can really move in and do some damage here. Which means I'm probably going to be forced to have the Finns use their artillery and their mortar to help defend those units there. So before we deal with reinforcements, let's move our active players here. We have this one unit down here that is reduced, that needs to try recovery, and they're a good distance away from all the enemy, so that'll help their recovery efforts. We have a reduced unit here who is 1, 2, 3, 4 away from an enemy, and that's 5. So they're in good position too. They don't need to move because you just have to be 4 or more hexes away when attempting recovery to get that +1 die roll modifier. I also have to decide what to do with these 3 units here. I think it might be time for them to converge on this machine gun here and try and get it taken care of, and then they can launch their assault from there. I think this unit has enough movement points to get here on the land and not have to worry about the penalty for being on a frozen lake. Let's take a closer look here real quick. We have those 2 units that are stuck here. They're going to equal a strength of 10. I do have this adjacent stack with 2 infantry companies with a strength of 10 also. Now it would be a 1-to-1 ratio if I assaulted, but the Soviets get a 2 shift for assaults, so now may be the time to try an assault. Normally you have to pay the terrain cost of the hex that the enemy is in that you're assaulting, +2. In this case, underneath them is Suo, which would be 3 + 2 would be 5, so they could still do it, or you could always assault an adjacent hex as long as it's not prohibited terrain. But then again, the Finns do have an advantage still. If we look at the combat/assault resolution modifier table and go all the way down to number 15, it says they have the Finnish submachine gun bonus, which is a 1-column shift in the Finns' favor when assaulting into or defending in woods, Suo, or village. In this case it would be Suo, so that 2-column Soviet shift would be reduced to a 1-column shift. So I'm trying to determine if it's worth it. I don't think it is, because if we look on the combat results table and we go to the 2-to-1 column, which this attack would be, we see red numbers on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those, which means 7 of the 12 possible results would have the Soviets incurring losses. And during an assault, all losses on the attacking side have to be taken as step reductions. So an assault is not a prudent choice at this time. But I do want to get in a position to get my concentric attack bonus again. So I'm going to have both of those infantry companies move to this Suo hex here, which is going to cost 3 movement. And we are in an enemy zone of control, so we're going to have to pay 1 extra because we're moving from an enemy zone of control, so it's going to be a total of 4. And we would have to stop there anyway because we're still in an enemy zone of control, so we couldn't move any further. And at the same time, we have these 2 companies that are going to move at a cost of 3 to get adjacent also. And now we have our concentric attack bonus back, which will give us a column shift in the Soviets' favor. Let's focus in on what's going on here with this machine gun and my 2 Soviet units there. I'm going to do the same here as far as getting a concentric attack bonus. I'm going to move this company That's going to cost me 2 to go into that forest, and then 2 more to move into that forest, and that'll put me adjacent to that machine gun. And then these companies, I'm going to move down 1.5 into that frozen lake, and then another 1.5 into the next one for a total of 3, and they'll have to stop there because they're in the zone of control. And that'll put them in position to attack with that concentric bonus, even though we're going to lose half of our attack value attacking from the frozen lake. We're still going to have an advantage with the bonuses. Now I'm going to concentrate on these troops that are on the bridge. I think I'm going to go ahead and start moving them across because the Finns are not going to be able to sneak over and regain control of that bridge. I'm not worried about that right now. But if I move these machine guns into position to help, and maybe another infantry company, we can really do some damage to those 2 Finnish companies there. I'm not able to bring these companies all the way up to here because it would cost me 1, 2, 2.5, and I would need 3 to enter that zone of control, which would put me at 5.5 beyond their movement abilities. So do I want to move them into position and get ready, or do I want them to start coming this direction also? I will get these machine guns into position first. Let's bring a little more firepower forward with that machine gun there. That machine gun also. And do I want to bring this one over? I'm going to start moving this machine gun over to the island because they do gain points for controlling the island. Plus, if I can set up maybe at this village here, it'll give me some direct fire support. So moving off the bridge would be 1.5, and then another 1.5 for 3. I can't move any further, and I think I have line of sight right there without issue because there's only 1 hex between us, and it's all frozen lake, so they can provide direct fire support for this pending combat. I want to move my infantry gun and mortar into a better position. I forgot to flip over my mortar. There we go. So we want to get that mortar right in the middle of the action because it can only fire a distance of 6, but it can only move 2. So we need to stay on the roads. 1 and 2, and that'll give us range on most things right here, but not far away yet. Not into the village. So we'll go ahead and move 1 and 2. Let me put it under that company. The infantry gun would be starting there. It can also only move 2. We'll go ahead and move it 1.5. Leave it there. It has a range of 10. I think it can hit almost anything. Yeah, it can hit all the way to the gravel pits and hotel and most of Tolviarvi village also. So it's in a good position right now. I do want to move it in another turn, maybe just on the other side of the bridge here, because that way it'll take care of this entire area. And we do have another one coming. I'm not going to move these depleted units. I'm going to have them attempt recovery, so they're going to stay where they're at. I do have 2 infantry companies and a machine gun and an infantry company there that I need to decide what I'm going to do with. I do have a large number of reserves that are going to be coming, reinforcements, so I'm going to go ahead and move them to the north. That would be 1, 2.5. Again, I can't move into that Suo hex. I'll do the same with them. We will move the machine gun 1, 2.5. And we'll do the same with that infantry company. That way we're in position to make this push towards the hotel and gravel pits and the Kivisalmi Bridge. I'm going to go ahead and attempt recovery for these 2 reduced infantry companies before I bring on the reinforcements. Both of them are 4 or more hexes away from the enemy. If we look at the recovery table, keeping in mind that they're both 4 or more hexes away from the enemy, they do have the morale bonus still, so they're going to get a +1. The unit is 4 or more hexes, that's another +1, and that's it. So it's not too bad. With the +2 and needing a 6, they got a 50-50 shot. A 4, 5, or a 6 will give them recovery. First up is the 8th of the 3rd, 609th. Let's roll for their recovery. Oh, they missed. Not successful. And next we have the 6 of the 2nd 609th. They are successful. The 8th of the 3rd 609th failed their recovery, but the 6th of the 2nd was successful. So we can flip them back to their full strength side. And in the next turn we can move them forward and get them back into the action. Now we have our large number of reinforcements. I forgot to flip my artillery. We have the infantry companies coming on. I'm not worried about the artillery from the Finns. They have several turns before they're going to get more rounds, and they have more important things to worry about with these units that are going to be under attack. So I'll bring on my first group of infantry units, and again, this road is now 4 or more away, all the way up to this point right here, where these machine guns are on the other side of the Kivisalmi Bridge. So I can come all the way up to there with the extended movement without worry. So let me grab one of them, and we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. And we have to stop there so we don't get within 3 or less of that unit. And I'm going to move the remaining infantry units of that group, the 7th, 8th, and 9th of the 3rd. I'm going to move them all together. They are all now in place on the south side of the Kivisalmi Bridge. I don't want to get crazy and stack up a whole bunch in one place, so I'm going to move the next group, which is the 4th, 5th, and 6th of the 2nd 364th. I'm going to move them along the road and leave them here with this infantry gun. Now all 3 of those companies are in this hex with that infantry gun. We have a machine gun. We have 2 machine guns that can move 4, but with the extended movement they could move up to 6. 5 is here, 6 is here. Here we have that unit that did not recover and a mortar. So I will move those machine guns 6, both of them. And now in this hex we have the mortar on top, but there's 2 machine guns, and I put that unit that's reduced on the bottom. Now we still have a mortar and an infantry gun, both that can only move 2, which means at 4 with the extended movement, this is as close as we can get them. So we'll move them both here, just to the northwest of that infantry company. Infantry gun and mortar are in place. And now everyone has taken their actions. It's time for the first player to conduct their combat phase. We'll take care of what's going on Katasari Island first before we take care of the combat up here between the Kivisalmi and Kivisalmi bridges. I'm keeping the island kind of off to the left side here because I wanted to get this mortar and infantry gun in frame because they're too far away. Well, the mortar's too far away to help with the other combat, but it's close enough to help here as support. So the phasing player here needs to declare which hex I'm attacking, and we know it's going to be this machine gun hex with all 3 of these infantry units. Now I have to declare any offensive support. I'm going to have some direct fire support from this machine gun unit. I'm going to have indirect fire support from that mortar. And I think I will wait and save that infantry gun for the other combat. The Finns have to declare any support they're going to use. Whew, I know that machine gun, if we lose it, we can't recover it. So I'm going to go ahead and use some support. My mortar up here is too far away to help down here, so the only choices I have are to use my off-map artillery. And I'll use both of my off-map artillery, my last 2 76mm ammo caches, and attack these 2 infantry units out here on the frozen lake in defensive support. So we got to resolve this support first with the phasing player, the Soviets, so we'll resolve the machine gun and the mortar. We'll deal with the machine gun first. There's no infantry companies in this hex. This is not a frozen lake being attacked. There are no modifiers for the machine gun because it's only firing at a range of 2 and none of the other ranged attack modifiers apply here. So it's simply going to roll its 2 dice and add its ranged attack strength of 5. So we have 4, 5, 6 plus 5 is 11. Again, we need at least a 14 to cause any effect. And now we will have the mortar fire on that machine gun position. Also no modifiers. And we're going to have an indirect fire, strength of 5. That's definitely too low. So both of those are unsuccessful, luckily for the fins. I flipped that mortar over to show that it was fired. Now the Finns are using their ammo in a desperate attempt to help this machine gun unit. There are 2 infantry companies in that hex that they're targeting, so they'll get 2. It is a frozen lake, so they'll get 2 more for a total of 4 bonus on their ranged attack modifier. And that is all. We're going to need a really high roll here. So the first artillery battery fires, and that is a 6 plus 4 is 10, plus their 2 is 12, not enough. So we need a good roll here for the second. That's a little better. We have an 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 2 more is 14, and that is just enough to give us a suppression. I flipped both of the finished artillery over to fired, reduced their ammo by 2 down to 0, and we're going to get a suppression marker there. And that is all of our support. Now we need to determine our combat ratio. We know the Finns are going to double their 3 to a 6. We have 5 there. 10 here that's reduced by half because of the frozen lake. So that is 5 and 5. So a 10 to 6 ratio. A 10 to 6 ratio reduces down to about a 1.6, 1.7 to 1. So we go in the favor of the defender and make it a 1 to 1. The suppression from the Finns will make it a 1 to 2 in their favor. But the Soviet morale bonus will cancel our suppression out and make it back to a 1 to 1. So this one's going to end up rolling on the flat 1 to 1 table, which is actually bad news for the Soviets, unless they get another devastating roll. Well, we'll see how the Soviets do. And they got an 8. If we look on the 1 to 1, in an 8, we have a 1 to 1. 1 loss on each side. Attacker must take the first loss as a step reduction, so we will go ahead and reduce one of the infantry companies. Now the machine gun has a choice. Well, it does not have a choice, because if I retreat, I can only go into these hexes here, and they're all in enemy zones of control. Retreating into an enemy zone of control means I'm going to have to take a step reduction anyway, so I will just go ahead and stay where I'm at and take my step reduction. Because if I move on to one of these frozen lake hexes, that would allow these units to move on the land and still be able to attack me, and they wouldn't have their disadvantage anymore. So I'll just stay put. The machine gun's in rough shape, but it survived. Speaking of rough shape, we have this combat here for the Finns. The Soviets are going to attack with every unit surrounding it right now, and we're going to use our mortar and both infantry guns as support. I'm going to save my off-map artillery. I'm going to use them for something else. The only support available to the Finns are the mortar unit there, and I will going to attack one of these stacks. I'll attack the unit on the road. That way, if they get reduced, they have the easiest movement because they're already on the road where this unit is not. Let's resolve our offensive and defensive support. Let's do the 2 Soviet infantry guns first, since they are the weaker of the 2 attacking indirect fire weapons. They're going to get a +2 because there's 2 infantry companies in that Finnish hex, and that is the only modifier they're going to get on their ranged attack. They didn't roll very good. The first one gets a 6, 7, 8, plus the 3. Strength of the infantry gun is only an 11. The second one fires with the same modifiers. Also bad. Very good for the Finns. Now the mortar will fire with the same modifiers. It's a little stronger. Still not good. 5, 6, 7 plus the mortar strength of 5 gives them 12. All of the support failed. The Finns are getting really lucky. Now I'm thinking the Soviets should have used our artillery here. Now we have the defensive support, that mortar firing on those two Soviet companies. So we'll get a +2 because of those two companies. Nothing else applies as far as modifiers, and the Finns roll pretty good. So that's 9, 10, 11, and they have a strength of 4, which gives them 15. That is enough to earn a suppression. The Finns continue to get lucky. They got a suppression, which will help cancel out that morale bonus that the Soviets are going to get. But let's see how they fare now that we have to do the combat ratio. And this is where I think the Finns are going to be in trouble. So let me just move that. So we got a 5 and a 5 for 10, and I believe it's the same here. 5 and 5 for 20, and then 2 4s for 8. So we have a 28 attacking a 10. So the Finns did kind of get lucky there, because that's a 2.8 to 1. And we have to round down, so it's only a 2 to 1. And again, the Finns had a suppression that will cancel out the Soviet morale bonus. But they are on opposite sides, so they're going to get the concentric attack bonus and shift one more to the right to make it a 3 to 1 attack. And that is it. So we're looking on the 3 to 1 table. So the Soviets need to make sure they roll at least a 7 or higher to avoid any casualties on their side. All right, let's see what the Soviets can do. Oh, that barely does anything. If we look on the combat results table, a 7 is a 0 to 1. Soviets don't take any casualties, but they only inflict 1 loss on the Finns. Again, luck is on the Finns' side. We are going to retreat. We will retreat into an enemy zone of control, so we're going to have to take a step reduction anyway, but at least it'll move us 1 step closer to our own lines. So we'll move back. Let me flip one of them over for the step reduction. And we did retreat 1 hex, which is actually kind of good for us, because the next retreat, if we just move in our turn, we are out of an enemy zone of control, so we can get back behind our front lines and better defend ourselves. I don't think the Soviets are going to let those 2 units get away with that minor setback. We do have 2 artillery pieces that we could lob rounds on as they retreat. Again, to get a step reduction, we would need to at least get a 17 on our modified roll. Let me look at the modifiers. We would get +2 for the infantry units, and that would be it. The 76mm guns have a strength of 5, so we'd be adding 7 onto our roll. So we'd need to at least get a 10, 11, or 12. Well, I think that's kind of worth it, considering we have so much ammo. So I'm going to go ahead and fire both of my artillery pieces onto those retreating units. We already know the modifier is 2 because of the 2 infantry companies. The first one will fire, and gets an 8 plus 5 is 13, plus the 2 modifier is 15, so they did land a suppression. And the second one, didn't roll high enough for anything. Both artillery pieces were fired, and they used up 2 more ammo, taking them down to 6. We could put a suppression marker on those units because they earned it, but at the end of the combat phase, suppression markers are removed. It would make sense if these units were able to provide defensive support in a combat that was going to happen still in this combat phase, but nothing is going to happen like that, so we can just take the marker off. The Soviets tried, but the Finns held on, and we are now going to have the Finns take their turn. And on their turn, they will get 1 reinforcement, the 4th of the 2nd JR-16 Infantry Company. We'll place them over here by the supply hex. The first thing the Finns are going to do is resolve all of this digging that they've been doing and flip a lot of these markers to the dug-in side. So all of the units that do that, that's going to be their action for this turn. A little bit of information about being dug in. It provides a 1 column to the left shift on defense. And also, once a dug-in marker is placed, Any and all unit types that are in that hex gain the benefit of that shift. Any friendly units that move into that hex that's already dug in gain the benefit of it. If for some reason there's no more units of the owning side of that dug in marker, whether they get eliminated, destroyed, have to retreat out of the hex, if there's no more of that unit there or of that side there, then the digging in or dug in marker is removed. Therefore, the attacker cannot advance into the dug in hex and gain the benefits of it. We'll start at the bottom here, and there's only one unit in most of these, so we'll know that that will conclude their turn this action, and all of these units are really digging in this coastline to make it as strong a defense as possible. This one here did not dig in. It was already dug in. So let me turn all of these sideways so I know that that one can still take an action. And the same thing up here. We have another unit, this machine gun unit that was digging in on the west of the Kivisalmi Bridge. And that is completed also. Did we have anybody digging in here? Oh, we did. That's right. Great. Well, this mortar, I forgot to flip it over, but at the beginning of the finished turn, it would have been flipped back to its other side again. I also flipped both of our artillery pieces over, but that's not really much help. I am out of ammo. So we will go ahead and resolve this digging in at the gravel pits. And I'm going to place both of these units back on top. Even though they get the protection, I just don't want to get confused as far as knowing that they still can take their turn. And did we have that going on at the hotel? Yes, we did. So that infantry company will finish the digging in process. We turned them sideways also, so we remember, and place our units back. And that concludes all of the digging in. And now, what are we going to do with the rest of these units we have? What do I want to do with this machine gun unit? I can't really get going anywhere. I think they're just really in trouble there. It was a bad move on my part to put them out. I can only move one hex because it's going to be right into an enemy zone of control again. And I'll get back to what I'm going to do with them in a minute. Let's go look at the northern part of the finish line. I do need to definitely have that unit fall back far because he's going to need to recover. So we need to go +1 to get out of the enemy zone of control. So that would take us there, which is a half +1, 1.5. And now we can move along the road to get out of here. And I want to make sure that I'm at least 4 away. So that would be 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5. We'll stop there and put them underneath that dug in marker. So we can have them recover in a following turn along with all these other units that have to recover. I have this infantry unit that I want to fall back also. So we have a machine gun and an infantry unit there already. Do we want to risk putting another one there? Yeah, I think so. So we'll go ahead and have them fall back just to there at the hotel to give that some extra strength. They'll stay dug in with the machine gun and PRE. I'm not going to have my mortar fire. I want to save that for defensive purposes. Same with the machine gun, so I'm just going to go ahead and place them underneath the dug in. I'm not going to do anything with them this turn. Same with this unit down here. No, actually, yeah, we'll just leave them there. They're not going to do anything with them either. I don't want to move them out of that spot because we lose the dug in status. We have another unit here. How many infantry companies do we have here? Just the one. So I will move this one off of the Kivisalmi Bridge into the gravel pits because of its value as a target. And the same here. I'm going to leave PRA on the front line. Leave that machine gun there to defend the hotel. And get them all ready. The only thing I have left is the machine gun unit and my reinforcement. This machine gun unit's in trouble. There's nothing I can do. If I move here, they can move 1.5. They can move 1.5, 3, 4, 5 right into position again to get a concentric attack bonus on me. I just really screwed up, and that unit is basically lost. So we have our reinforcements, this one company here. Don't forget we have Ludikomoki here that's worth points. I don't think the Soviets are in danger of breaking through there anytime soon. So 4 away, 1, 2, 3. So to here, I can move all the way to the gravel pits and stay 4 away. But that would put 3 companies there. What did we have here? Was it a machine gun? Yeah. This seems to be pretty well defended here. There's lots of dug-in units here, but not a lot of protection underneath those. So if I come to 3, 4, 5, 6, I can't go there because that would be within 3. I could make it all the way to here though. So if I move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I could go here for 6, and then 6.5 there. I can use all that extended movement and stay dug in there. Start the build up for these attackers that are probably going to come this way after they get done with that machine gun, or before, because these guys can basically peel off from there without much trouble. But they don't have a lot in the way to help them. They're just one company. And I think that's it. I'm just going to flip all my markers around because I don't have any attacks or anything that I'm going to do. It would be ridiculous to try and attack with this machine gun. Everything is straightened out now, and we're ready to move on to turn number 4, and that's going to take us into dusk, and line of sight is going to change drastically. And we'll have to see where the tactics take us. We're getting close to our first night turn, so the Finns should set up to get ready to conduct a night raid also, to try and inflict some losses on the Soviets. We're dug in pretty good. We have a unit that's probably going to get lost here. Finns don't have much in the way of reinforcements, just a couple more trickling in. The Soviets have a few more trickling in this day also, but the Soviets have to act pretty fast here because they're going to lose their morale bonus after this night when we get into the December 9th at dawn. They didn't do any assaults. They weren't really in position to do any good assaults. That may be my fault for not stacking enough units together, but we'll go with what we have. The Soviets must prepare for the coming night and the freezing temperatures that come along with that. On the night turn, they have to build bonfires in order to not roll on the sub-zero loss table. Let's take a look at that real quick so we know what it is when I'm talking about it. If the Soviets are not beneath a bonfire marker, each stack that's not below a bonfire must roll on this table. And if they roll a 3 or less, the stack has to take a step reduction. And we can see that the modifiers are fairly simple. If the stack's on a frozen lake, it's -1. If it's the Finns, they get a +1 since they're prepared for the cold weather. They don't have to be under bonfires, but that would be if the Finns had to roll on that table because they conducted a night raid or some other reason. Also keep in mind the Soviets have to be 4 or more hexes away from the enemy in order to build that bonfire. So these units down here, well these definitely want to get off this frozen lake. But these units down here, they can't build the bonfire because they're right next to an enemy unit. Now if they were to eliminate the machine gun, this one would be okay, but he would be within 3 of the shoreline units there. So he would have to move away in order to build that bonfire. So we got some different things coming up here in the night turn, but first we still have to get through dusk and come up with a strategy and see what the Soviets are going to bring and what they're going to try to do to make some ground against these finished defenses over here by the hotel and against this shoreline of dug-in area.